Good day everyone, we are the group 4 and my name is Andre B. Saure, the leader of this group. And here are my members. So, Mel John Ibanez, Excel Mark Villaflor C. Pialago, Lawrence Christopher Maranian, CJ M. Bongot, Gian Peter Cantila Hermosissima, James Bob Alburo Sampaga, and Alan Nerosa Borgonia. So these are the objectives for this discussion. Then first is to further understand the meaning of sociology and its importance. Then to fully introduce the founding father of sociology. Then to know the basic social institutions. Then to fully identify the major theoretical perspectives. And the last one is to differentiate between individual self and collective self. Sociological perspective is important in understanding the self because people tend to accept their social world as something natural, and also the ability to reflect and consider who one is in relation to others is described as the reflexive self. From a sociological perspective, the reflective self develops in the interaction with others through a process that includes a person's self-efficacy, self-image, self-concept, and self-esteem. The self is a relatively stable set of perception of who we are in relation to ourselves, others, and to social systems. The self is socially constructed in the sense that it is shaped through interaction with other people. Émile Durkheim was a well-known French sociologist famous for his views on the structure of society. He was also the founding father of the sociology since 1970s. His work focused on how traditional and modern societies evolve and function. His theories were founded on the concept of social facts defined as the norms, values, and structures of society. Émile Durkheim's theories. So according to his theory, a sociologist society functions based on the division of labor and the equilibrium of social hierarchies. So Émile Durkheim has three theories: the functionalism, anomy, and the division of labor. So the first theory that we will tackle about is the functionalism. So it emphasizes a societal equilibrium. So if something happens to disrupt the order and the flow of the system, society must adjust to achieve a stable state. According to him, society should be analyzed and described in terms of functions. So for example, the state provides a public education for children. And the family of the children pays taxes which the state uses for public education. So the children who learn from public education go on to become law-abiding and working citizens who pay taxes to support the state. So the example said that the state provides public education for children, but a disruption or disequilibrium in the system occurs. Perhaps the education is subpar and the children drop out and become criminals. The system adjusts to improve the education and attempts to rehabilitate the criminals for them to become law-abiding and tax-paying citizens. So the next theory is the division of labor. So his concept of the division of labor focused on the shift in societies from a simple society to one that is more complex. So he argued that the traditional societies were made up of homogeneous people that were more or less the same in terms of values, religious beliefs, and backgrounds. While the modern societies, in contrast, are made up of a complex division of labor, beliefs, and backgrounds. Then in traditional societies, the collective consciousness ruled, social norms were strong, and social behavior was well regulated. And while the modern societies, common consciousness was less obvious and the regulation of social behavior was less punitive and more restitutive, aiming to restore normal activity to society. So, and the last theory is the anomies. So, inside the anomies, we have the mechanical and organic solidarity. So, the mechanical solidarity occurs when individuals within structural units are alike and self-sufficient. For example, in traditional societies, people grew their own food, made their own clothes, and had little need for extensive social contact with others because they did not have to rely on others for daily needs. So, the organic solidarity is when a large population is stratified into smaller structural units. So, there is a high level of independence among individuals and structures, but there's still a division of people along the lines of labor or type. And also, Durkheim recognized that things like increased communication, transportation, and interaction with others resulted in the social change from a mechanical solidarity to organic. A breakdown of norms and collective consciousness occurs when a societies evolved too quickly from traditional to modern. The community becomes weakened and this leads to disorder, crisis, and anomies.
Hi, I am Gian Peter Sishima, and now let's talk about what is sociology. Sociology gives you the skills of critical and analytical thinking, writing ability, cultural competence, and self-awareness. Sociology deals with social facts, social phenomena, man's social relationship, and behavior. And now there are four types of theoretical perspectives of sociology. One is structural functional, two social conflict, three feminism, and the last one is symbolic interactionism. What is structural functional? It is a school of thought to which each of the institution, relationships, roles, and together with the constitute of society serve as a purpose. Each is indispensable for the continued existence of other and society as whole. Now let's go to the second one, the social conflict. It is social theory which argues that individuals and groups within society interact on the basis of conflict rather than consensus. Social conflict occurs when two or more people oppose each other in social interaction like protest demonstration. And the third one is feminism. Feminism is a conflict theory and theoretical perspective which observes gender and its relation to power. It focuses sexual orientation, races, economic status, and nationality. And last but not the least, the fourth one, which is symbolic interactionism. It is a micro-level theory that focuses on the relationships among individuals within society. It is an approach to understanding the relationship between human and society.
The self is a product of a modern society among other constructions. Significantly changed society and affected how an individual builds and develops his or her self-identity. The society of the concept takes as its subject matter the analysis of the concept as social product and social forces. Self and society have a very close relationship. Self can contribute society and society can contribute self. How you can contribute to society? we have first, be aware. Second, spread awareness about things that bother some. Third, promote a healthy environment. Fourth, take apart or start small activities or events that helps others. While society can contribute self. As a student, we have so much access of information around us. We have the power to contribute for all the betterment of our society. The situational approach to self and society sees society as always in the process of being created through the interpretations. So, this topic, from this perspective, the interpretation is made that individuals are free to define the situations in any way to come. We do not see society as intuitively shaped. Instead, we assume the society is stable and durable. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I'm Eljan Ibanez. Today, I will discuss the 5 major social institutions. First, what is social institutions? Social institutions is an interrelated system of social rules and social norms. It's organized around the satisfaction of an important of social need or social function. These are organized patterns of beliefs and behavior that are centered on basis of social needs. For example, the United States is a society that encompasses many cultures, mechanisms or patterns of social order focused on meeting social needs, such as political, education, economic, family, and religion. So, in every institutions has some rules which must be compulsorily obeyed by the individuals. These 5 major institutions in rural sociology. So first, the political institution. This often makes the government policy on the economy and social systems, and otherwise provides representation for the population. Political institution is important because this is the arrangement by the government of the people and democracy. The term political institutions may also refer to the recognized structure of roles and principles within which the above organizations operate, including such concepts as the right to vote, a responsible government, and accountability. For example, such political institutions include political parties, trade unions, and the legal courts. Second one is education, which a society's children are taught a basic academic knowledge, learning skills, and cultural norms. Every nation in the world is equipped with some form of education system. Though those systems vary greatly, they provide a structure for behavior in a particular part of social life. Education is one of the major social institutions that exist in the society. It establishes a goal of a social equality and a common knowledge base among students. For example, preschools, child care, primary, elementary schools, secondary high schools, and universities. Next, the economic. Economic are the responsible for organizing the production, the exchange, and the distribution. The term economic institutions refers to 2 things: the well-established arrangements and the structures that are part of the culture or society. For example, a company or an organization that deals with money or with managing the distribution of foods and services, the banks, the government, the organizations, and the investment funds. Next will be the family. Family can be referred to us as a group that is deliberately created or created by the virtue of birth. It may be created to serve a various purposes, like for protection, for security, for sense of belonging, for control, and for disciplined behavior. For example, it determines the kinships which a family member's blood or marriage relationship to another family member. Lastly, the religion. Religion describes the beliefs, the values, and the practices related to sacred or spiritual concerns. Religion is a social institution because it includes beliefs, and practices that serves the needs of a society. Religion is also an example of a cultural universal because it is found in all societies in one form or another. For example, the churches, the temples, the mosques, and the other places of worship and institutions that support and manage the practice of a specific set of religious beliefs.
Hey, I am Alan N. Burgunya and I will explain to you the sociological approach to self and identity. Begins with the assumptions that there is a reciprocal relationship between self and society. The self influences society through the actions of individuals, thereby creating group, organizations, networks, and institutions. So, self-identity or self-concept is one's concept of oneself, including the perception one has about one's abilities, flaws, status, and worth. Sociologists study how self-identity develops, especially in relation to social factors. The sociological approach goes beyond everyday common sense sociology. Is an attempt to understand the social world by situating social events in their corresponding environment, social structure, culture, history, and etc. And trying to understand social phenomena by collecting, analyzing empirical data. So, the meaning of sociological approach to self and identity is when people tries to assume na ang lihok sa isa ka tao nakadepende sa lugar kung asa siya nabilong. Like for example, you're living in Cebu pero dili ka originally from Cebu. You need to learn how to act nga bagay sa mga regulations sa Cebu para wa kay maapakan ng mga tao at the same time mga balaod. In addition, since they are related, ang society where you belong will function accordingly depending sa needs sa mga tao nga nagpuyo ana na lugar. Like for example, sa language na ilang gigamit ug ang mga meaning that will allow us to function as a member of the society. To sum up, ang self should act accordingly to laws set by the society para malinaw ang pagpuyo.
Hi guys, my name is Cadet Lawrence Christopher B. Marian, and today I'm going to discuss about the subtopics in the self being a product of modern society among other constructions. So basically, there are two topics that I'm going to present to you guys. First is the situational approach and second is the structural approach. But before that, let us first define what is the self in the sociological perspective. So by definition, the self is a relatively stable set of perceptions of who we are in relation to ourselves, others, and to social systems. The self is socially constructed in the sense that is shaped through interaction with other people. So, for short, the self is who we are through the interaction of or with other people. So first, let us tackle the situational approach. So by definition, the traditional symbolic interactionist perspective known as the situational approach to self in society sees society as always in the process of being created through the interpretations and definitions of actors in situations. So to sum it up and for short, people behave very differently depending on their situation. So to better understand this, I will give you an example. So, this theory or explanation denotes that it is hard to predict someone's behavior based off just one situation, since that situation is not going to predict how they'll act in another situation. So, for short, depending on the situation, their behavior may change. So, to better understand this, I'll give you a little scenario. So, for example, Cardo is walking down the street and finds a 500 peso bill that was dropped in the street by someone, but he or she doesn't know that he dropped the 500 peso bill on the street. So Cardo saw that there was a lot of people around. So he grabbed the money and gave it to the person who lost it. So the person was very thankful that Cardo returned the 500 peso bill. So in the next scenario, Cardo finds another 500 peso bill in the street, but only no one saw him that day, and there were no people around. And the person unnoticeably lost the 500 peso bill again. So Cardo rushed and got the money, but instead of returning the money, Cardo placed the money inside his pocket and did not return it. So this is a good example of the situational approach, in which your behavior is reliant on the situation. So there are two situations in where there were many people who saw Cardo, and the second situation is when there was no people around that saw him. So if Cardo picked up the money and returned it, even if no one is around, we can conclude that Cardo is with pure intentions and Cardo is a good person. But since Cardo's behavior changed when no one was looking, therefore we can say that his actions is very dependent on the situation. So again, situational approach is where self-behavior is dependent on the situation. And since we are done with the situational approach, let us proceed to the next approach, which is the structural approach. So, hi guys! Next, we will tackle about the structural approach. So first, I'll read an example from the internet, and next I'll give my own example so that we will definitely understand what is structural approach. So first, let us define it. So within this perspective, we do not see society as tentatively shaped. Instead, we assume that society is stable and durable as reflected in the patterned regularities that characterize most human action. Also, we can look at the patterns of behavior of one individual over time and come to know that individual. So, with this pattern, let us try to know what it really means. So, I'll give an example. So, patterns of behavior within and between individuals have different levels of analysis. And this is key to understanding the link between self and society. At one level, we can look at the patterns of behavior of one individual over time and come to know that individual, as what I have said. So, by pulling several such patterns across similar individuals, we can come to know individuals of certain type. At still another level, we can look at the patterns of behavior across individuals to see how these patterns fit with the patterns of other to create larger patterns of behavior. So, it's like a staircase that goes up. The patterns turn into patterns, into patterns, into patterns. It is the larger inter-individual patterns that constitute social structure. We can provide an illustration. So, in this chapter, we will discuss how people act to verify their conceptions of who they are. For example, a scientist may act in a way that make it clear to herself as well as to others that she is very careful, analytical, logical, and experimentally inclined. She may engage in a variety of actions and interactions to convey these images. So these are individual patterns of behavior that help us understand the individual scientists. So it helps us better understand individual scientists. These same patterns of behavior may be part of a larger social structure. We may find, for example, that scientists who are careful, analytical, logical, and experimentally inclined, and who do these things well, are elected to higher positions in their scientific organizations. If we take a broader view, we may see that there is a flow of such persons into positions of prominence within their scientific societies, and into positions of eminence in policy and governmental circles. The result is that their pronouncement about being scientists and their activities as scientists help them to maintain boundaries between them and people. So boundaries between the scientists and people. So the scientists who are careful, analytical, logical are different from just normal people who are not like them. So let us continue. So now it's time to give my own example of what I have understood in the text I read earlier. So example, people can be grouped by the pattern of behaviors they make. So the pattern of behaviors they make. Let's say there is a one maritime student who is very tapulan. Tapulan means a Visayan word for lazy, in which he failed most of his junior years as freshman and sophomore. So with this example, we can convey in our minds that these tapulan students are more likely to fail in his remaining years. So in his remaining years in the future, he is more likely to fail. So we can see an individual pattern which we can also relate to other maritime students. So this means this individual pattern of behavior can be linked into a larger group of maritime students. So this larger group of maritime students, their behavioral pattern can be also linked into a much larger group. So as we take a much wider look at this, we can conclude that this tapulan group of students is very different from the hardworking ones. So we concluded that the tapulan students will most likely to fail, and the hardworking ones will most likely be successful. So to sum it up, the structural approach denotes that oneself's behavior can be patterned and can be linked into other groups who does things similar to you. And over time, we can see that these similar groups will end up having the same destiny in the future. So that would be all, and thank you. Thank you for listening.
Good day, everyone. I'm Cadet CJ Bongot, and let's talk about individual self. So, individual self is consist of cognition regarding one's personal traits, states of behavior, and contain those aspects of the self-concept that differentiate the person from the others. It is how you perceive your behavior, abilities, and unique characteristics. So, individual self highlights one unique side. Individual are beings who do take and individual responsibilities in their everyday social roles and risk social consequence when they fail to live it up. There are four components of individual self. First is the identity. Second is the body image. Third is the self-esteem. And lastly, the role performance. Identity is the qualities, beliefs, personality, looks, and expression of a person. It is what makes every person unique. Body image, it is a perception that a person has their physical self, but most importantly, the thoughts and feelings the person experiences as a result of the perception. Role performance. It is how a person expresses his or her role. Sociologist Irving Goffman presented the idea that a person is like an actor on stage. Goffman believed that we use impression management to present ourselves as we hope to perceive. And lastly, self-esteem is a positive and negative orientation towards oneself. It is an overall evaluation of one's worth or value. And that's all. That's all about individual self.
Good day, everyone. I am Cadet Sampaga, and this is my report about collective self. Collective self comprises characteristics that the person shares with other environmentalists and that differentiate environmentalists from the other people. It suggests that the collective self is born fundamental or primary self. The collective self consists of those aspects of the self that are based on membership in social group categories. It refers to the perception of self as an interchangeable exemplar of some social category rather than a perception of self as a unique person. The collective self is based on impersonal bonds to other that are derived from the shared identification with a social group. Those bonds do not necessarily require the close personal relationship between group members. The collective self-concept is composed of attributes that are one shared with a member of the group to which one belongs. It includes those aspects of the self-concept that differentiate in group member from member or of irrelevant outgroups. Commonalities with group may be based on stable characteristics such as race or gender, or unachieved states such as occupation or party members. For example, a person may hold self-definition of being an environmentalist,